is a well-known bacteria, and here's the image for your reference. And here's a cultured sample also for your reference. So the E. coli bacteria, it's a gram-negative rod. It's also an Enterobacteriaceae. What's notable about this is that it ferments lactose, so it will grow pink on the McConkey agar. To remember this, think about the pink milk carton that we see over here. And then the colonies will grow with an iridescent green sheen on the Eocene methylene blue agar. So to remember this, think about the green coasters that we see here, here, and here. And that's to help you remember that the colonies will grow with an iridescent green sheen on the Eocene methylene blue agar. And then, of course, E. coli is catalase positive, and so it is a facultative anaerobic, as it is also oxidase negative. So, remember that it is oxidase negative and that it is catalase positive, thereby making it a facultative anaerobic. To remember that it is catalase positive, think about the animal cat that we see over here. Alright, so the main reservoir where E. coli can be found is in the human colon. So it may end up colonizing the vagina or the urethra. And then treatment for such infection is supportive, and rehydration may be necessary in severe cases. For diseases, E. coli happens to be the number one cause of urinary tract infections. So the way this works is that endogenous fecal flora contaminate and ascend along the urethra. And this happens to be more common in females because of the fact that they have shorter urethras. And then the mechanism is due to the fimbriae or the pili of the bacterial structure that allows for the adherence to the uroepithelium. To remember this, think about the girl with a fimbriae bow drinking the number one glass of wet yellow liquid, as shown over here. So here's a girl with the fimbriae bow drinking a yellow glass liquid on a glass that has the number one sign on it. And that's to help you remember that E. coli is the number one cause of urinary tract infections, especially in females. Now, E. coli is the number 2 most common cause of neonatal meningitis when maternal fecal flora contaminate during parturition. I believe the number 1 cause of neonatal meningitis might be the Streptococcus agalactiae. But anyways, E. coli is the number 2 most common cause of neonatal meningitis, and this occurs when the maternal fecal flora contaminate during the parturition or the delivery of the baby. And the mechanism for this is through the bacteria's capsule that has the K1 serotype antigen. So remember, it's the K1 serotype antigen that is responsible for this neonatal meningitis pathology when E. coli is involved. To help you remember this, think about the little child with the meningitis helmet reaching out to the encapsulated cake, as we see over here. So here's a little child of a neonatal age wearing the meningitis helmet. And then obviously this kid is reaching out for this cake that has the letter K. And that letter K is supposed to help you remember the K1 serotype antigen that is found in E. coli's capsule. And then of course E. coli can also lead to septicemia, particularly gram-negative this leads to clumps of platelets forming that will then lyse the red blood cells. In other words, destroying the red blood cells, and this leads to hemolysis. So to remember that the bacterial damage of endothelial cells in the glomerulus are involved. Think about the child drinking out of the straw with the glomerulus, and we see that somewhere. I guess we don't see it here. Oh yeah, right over here is the straw shaped like the glomerulus of the kidneys. And to remember the aggregation of platelets and the decrease in platelet count, think about the used up dirty sticky platelets, or the used up dirty sticky plates. That's clever. I believe these might be the plates that are used up and sticky and dirty, but I could be wrong. Anyways, you get the point. And to remember to lyse red blood cells and hemolysis, think about the red balloon popped by the straw that we see over here. And notice how this balloon is shaped like the red blood cell. So yeah, let's move on to the enterotoxigenic E. coli. So this is a toxigenic strain, and this happens to be a notorious cause of travelers' diarrhea, especially if the person travels to and from Mexico. So to remember this, think about the traveling truck with some Mexican writing that we see over here, El Agua de San Gabriel. So here's a traveling truck with the word Mexico on it. And so this toxigenic strain is transmitted through the fecal oral route through contaminated water specifically. And so this same truck should be a water delivery truck, hence the term El Agua. In case you didn't know, El Agua is water in Spanish. And then this can lead to explosive watery diarrhea. So again, think about the delivery truck driver holding the water jugs while standing on the brown stool that we see over here at a distance.